Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
This is the 19th Tee podcast. Kieran Marsh and Nathan Drudy back with you. Drudes, it's an absolute pleasure to have your company. It's been a little bit of time between drinks. And for those keen listeners, enthusiastic listeners, engaged listeners, they'll notice a bit of a change of scenery for me as well. So a bit of a break in between episodes as I was moving house. And yes, I have been relegated to what does look like a dungeon, so to speak, but one I'll make my own in coming weeks as my new recording studio at home. How are you, my friends?
Very well, KM. Great to be back in the ears of our listeners after a couple of weeks. We had a week off last week, and it's been a couple of weeks since we've had a conversation about golf, so I'm looking forward to doing that. Of course, I had Gailey a couple of weeks ago regaling me with his stories of his time in the US and running me through shot by shot his Monday queue into the 3M, which was always fun and enjoy. It was a genuine character, Gailey. But I'm glad that you're back, Marshy. I'm looking forward to chatting golf with you.
Happy to be back. Just briefly before we move forward, might I say I distinctly remember ahead of the NTPGA. I did tip Hayden Barron for that tournament, but I did say that I felt as though Gailey was the one to watch. I kind of said that I felt like a broken record because I picked him as the Order of Merit winner of the year previous, and he's got off to a red-hot start. So fantastic win by Gailey. Thoroughly enjoyed your conversation with him as I do listening to him speak on any platform. He's a true character, but I do think he's building for a big summer, and he's got off to the best possible start. So we won't look too much in the rearview mirror beyond that. Plenty's happened in the world of golf. Obviously, Victor Hovland winning the Tour Championship, coming into form at the very best time of year. But our focus is looking forward, and plenty on the agenda this evening, not least of which the Ryder Cup. We'll talk on that in just a moment. An exciting few weeks coming up, the build up to Marco Simone Golf Club in Rome. The Walker Cup over the weekend was won by the US in dramatic fashion at St Andrews, the home of golf. We had a DP World Tour qualifier event here in Australia, taken out by Matthias Sanchez, which we'll touch on, and a few other good Australian results around the world will round us out this evening. But we'll stick with the Ryder Cup off the top, Druid. Some call it the best event in golf. I know you and I are massive fans of this. Teams are now locked in, and I might leave it to you to kind of run through each lineup in a moment. But I just want to headline here one stat that I stumbled upon today, because a lot is being made of the relative talent gap, I think, in the two squads. Some questions, clouds even hanging over Team Europe. I think it is worth noting that the USA has not won the Ryder Cup in Europe since 1993. So let's bear that in mind and keep that as context to this entire conversation, and in fact the entire build-up to this event in Rome, because it is an awfully hard place for the US to go and win.
It is. So we'll start with the home side, Europe. So automatic qualifiers: Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, Matty Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Tyrrell Hatton and Bobby Mack are the six qualifiers automatically into the side. Captain's picks: Tommy Fleetwood, Sepp Straka, Nikolai Horgaard, Justin Rose, Shane Lowry, and Ludwig Aberg, which we can maybe unpack in a little more detail in a moment. The US team: Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Brian Harmon, Pat Cantlay, Max Homer, Xander Schauffele, Justin Thomas, Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, Sam Burns, and Ricky Fowler. I guess maybe notable absences as well from each team. I think there's probably one for Europe, which is Adrian Meronk. And then the other on the US side of things, probably the two big ones, Keegan Bradley and Cam Young, are the two that really jump out. Not sure where you'd like to start, Marshy, but maybe just on face value, give us your elevator thoughts on those two sides that are selected. Do you have a particular lean one way or the other? Which team's stronger on paper? Give us your top level overview.
I think there's little to no doubt that the US team is stronger on paper. What I've come to learn of Ryder Cup Strudes is that strength on paper matters for little once you step up to the first tee, particularly in Europe, and particularly given the build-out at Marco Simone includes the largest ever surrounding grandstand to a first tee in Ryder Cup history. So the pressure will certainly be on the US from the moment they walk into the arena, so to speak. And I think one thing I noticed today from Jamie Kennedy, who is a Golf Digest employee, director of social media and content, if I went to get his title correct, I thought was really interesting because there is a narrative around both of these teams in recent years. And it plays into how the courses are set up. The narrative is generally that the US are longer, but Europe are more accurate off the tee. And it's from that foundation that everything else is seemingly built. Jamie Kennedy had a really interesting tweet earlier today. The US team across their 12 averages 305.6 yards off the tee. European team averages 308.5 yards off the tee. So almost 3 yards further on average off the tee for the Europeans. From a driving accuracy perspective, the Europeans average 59.7% driving accuracy, the US 60.3%. So closer, but in fact leans towards the US. So what I would suggest is if you dig down in the data, these teams are probably far more evenly matched than we suspect on face value. Mm-hmm. I think both bring in players with incredibly hot hands. From a European perspective, they don't come much hotter than Victor Hovland at the moment. Tommy Fleetwood's ended the year very well. It seems remarkable to say, but Ludwig Aberg or Aberg, depending on your tendencies for pronunciation, he's literally coming in off a win at the European Masters. So there's some hot hands there. Similarly on the US side, but both teams are carrying players that haven't looked great, to put it plainly, in the last 6 months, even 12 months. You look at Justin Thomas on the American side. Xander Schauffele's been a little bit indifferent of late. And on the European side, I mean, someone like a Shane Lowry, who we absolutely love, I would suggest is pretty bloody lucky to be there. Yeah. So I think it's incredibly evenly matched. I do think that the US look better on paper, but I just don't think you can go close to understating how significant the home field advantage will be for Europe.
I think there's three key points to come from the team lineups. The first is Ludwig. I think that's an incredible selection. It's a ballsy selection, for no doubt. I've got a couple of notes here. He obviously won in Switzerland over the weekend, but he only turned professional in June. It's the shortest time in the history of the Ryder Cup between turning professional and making a Ryder Cup debut. Sergio was it before in 99, I think. And he hasn't played in a major. And I had to kind of do a bit of double checking on that, but that's apparently true. And I just think that is just an absurd, crazy, awesome selection. I just love it. I love everything to do with that selection. So I think there's one talking point around Ludwig, is number one. And then there's two on the US side of things. The first is Brooks. I think there's something to be said about that because we heard that players who play on LIV weren't going to be selected. There was this great divide and kind of the narrative started to change a little bit when the merger, so-called merger came about. So I think that's a great selection, no doubt. Brooks deserves his spot on the US team. And thirdly, and probably the largest talking point is Justin Thomas. And I'm not sure what your thoughts are here, but I've been pretty firm in the category that you can't pick players that aren't in form. And I understand that there are different records and players play better. I think he's 6-2-1 in Ryder Cup history or something like that. But he cannot find the center of the club face at the minute. And it's really jarring. And I don't necessarily buy into the whole, well, we'll pair him with Jordan and we'll kind of hide him away a little bit. I don't think you can pick blokes because you've got someone else that you can pair him with. He's still got to go out and play a singles match, which is going to be an important point. So I think JT is probably the biggest talking point. Of course, people like Keegan and Cam Young and, definitely, unlucky to miss out. But, of course, they can only take 12 players in. So they're my three real top-level takeaways from the teams. I don't know if you've got anything else that you want to add on those.
I think just touching on JT, I mean, I personally wouldn't have selected him, but that matters for little because I don't sit in Zach Johnson's shoes. I thought it was telling when the teams are selected, and he was obviously pressed on that a little, that he suggested, he's not a guy you leave at home. And I genuinely believe that there's an element, not an insignificant one, in terms of motivation for picking him that would suggest that if we lose and I didn't bring him, I will always wonder what might have been. Now, if they take him and lose, so be it. They rolled the dice, but this is a guy, if you can men in black yourself and forget current form of the last 18 months, this is a guy who has been really a lightning rod for that team for the last decade in team events. We saw it personally in Melbourne in the President's Cup. The measuring, putts not being given the length of his putt. He just gets under the skin of opponents. Now, I know that's not quantifiable. I know it's not worth a shot. I know it's not going to get you across the line in a singles game, but I think that's probably a motivating factor for Zach Johnson, is understanding that he has shifted the needle for this team in the past, and maybe given the opportunity, brought into the team, trusted, given the platform, does he step up and do it again? I don't think you can simply flick a switch and do it in front of 40,000 European fans at Marco Simone. I don't think it's as simple as that, but it'll be fascinating to watch. I also don't think from a US perspective, you can underestimate the power of the players. I have no doubt that you look at that list, there would have been several players lobbying Zach Johnson to select Justin Thomas. I think Keegan Bradley's incredibly unlucky, and equally he was incredibly classy in the way in which he handled not being selected. Mm-hmm. So look, it will be truly, the proof will be in the pudding, but I think it'll be a fascinating one to watch. Just on Ludwig, it's an incredible story. So he's the first player to graduate direct from college into the PGA Tour via the PGA Tour U program. He's kind of the pilot. He is the first one out. And to your point, 6 starts as a professional. He is the first player in history. You are 100% correct, Drew, that he is the first player in history of the Ryder Cup to have not played in a major to be selected on a team. The US get antsy about selecting players who haven't played in a major in the previous year, let alone never played in a major. Yeah. Like, it is an incredible selection from Luke Donald, but I think the writing was on the wall. It's since been revealed, since the teams are selected, he called him and urged him to come and play the European Masters in Switzerland. In the first 2 rounds, he was partnered with vice captains of the European team. This is Luke Donald getting his eyes as close as humanly possible on this player, and he did all that he was asked in terms of he came, he saw, and he literally conquered. He won the tournament on the weekend. So I think, do I think he's going to be influential for the European team? Most likely not. Do I think he will let them down? Absolutely not. But I agree, it's a fascinating selection. But look, I think for mine, there's something to be said about the way in which Europe approached this. The US have been chasing their tail to kind of get on board with a data-driven approach, and putting more than a minute's thought into pairings and preparations and bringing the team together, 12 months out, 18 months out from these competitions. Europe have led the way since Paul McGinley. And I think the way that they've built in the last, 15 years, there's something special, and I'm reticent to kind of draw a comparison to other sports, but often the debate in State of Origin here on the East Coast in rugby league is that New South Wales just don't get it. Queensland get it. And I see a lot of that in the Ryder Cup. Europe, like, they get it. Nikolai Hogarth was the player you probably would have thought, Adrian Moran, don't have to be dead to be stiff. The guy's won 3 times in the last 16 months, including the Italian Open at Marco Simone, and still doesn't get picked. Nikolai Hogarth is the one that gets in ahead of him. And the phone call today that, the Team Europe released the footage of Donald calling him, the emotion in his voice, him saying, like, I started this season with no other goal other than to make this team, not win a tournament, not win on the DP World Tour, not win a major, I wanted to be on this team. That was my sole goal. Like, there's something to be said about this team and what it means to them.
I totally agree. I think I actually am pretty comfortable with the European team. Like, I'm kind of okay with Lowry being in there. He's going to bring something, and his form hasn't been dreadful by any stretch. It's been okay. I agree with your point, Adrian Moronk. Last thing I'll just say is the JT one frustrates me because it's a pick of, we need to have a guy, and we're picking someone on past form, and it's a hope pick because we're hoping that he turns up and plays good Ryder Cup golf. And I was trying to think of someone like, why did Dustin Johnson not get picked? Like,
That's a great point.
His form's been far better than JT, and his Ryder Cup record is just as good. So I just think there's a lot more political stuff that goes on in the background. And to your point, maybe the pulling power of the players is a little stronger than we maybe give it thought for. So I was just while you were talking there, going through some stats and finding out what DJ's record is. I mean, 6-5, 6 wins, 5 losses. I mean, I know JT's is pretty good, but it's a hope pick that you hope that he's going to deliver a good performance. And I don't know. I think it's a big risk from the US, to be honest. So, but anyway, we got a little bit of time for him to sort his shit out and
completely agree. So. And the only thing I'd say, Druids, to conclude is that, as is often said, famously said, hope is not a strategy. So it will be intriguing to see the manner in which Zach Johnson employs him. You'd have to think he goes out on the first day with Jordan Spieth. I don't think he's not a pick. He's not a pick you've picked to hide. Mm. So you've got to, I think if you're Zach Johnson, you have to play him on the first day to see where he's at. Mm-hmm. And that will dictate how he's employed for the remainder of the competition. It may be the case that he gets on a heater. It may be the case that he doesn't play again to the singles, but it'll be intriguing to see what strategy Zach Johnson employs for Justin Thomas. September 27, Dreads, we are literally we're away, so it'll be incredibly exciting in Italy.
Agreed. Where do you want to go next?
I want to go to the Walker Cup, and only briefly, simply because I think any tournament played at the home of golf is worth discussion. So Walker Cup, for those who aren't familiar, it's the amateur version, essentially, of the Ryder Cup. It is the USA against Great Britain and Ireland, obviously not the broader European continent. But this was really quite special in the sense I didn't watch a great deal. I wasn't dialed into a large volume of the tournament, but there's something very special. I mean, we waxed lyrical about this course when it hosted the 150th Open Championship last year, ultimately won by Cameron Smith, and how special the place is, what it means to play there, the fact that it does have an aura, the fact that it is more special than almost any other golf course in the world. Imagine that, Druids, with all of the trimmings of a major championship stripped away, all of the infrastructure, all of the grandstands, all of the marquees stripped away. Thousands of people walking behind groups on the fairways of the home of golf. Now, the result itself was exciting. The US eventually winning 14.5 to 11.5. They're behind significantly going into the singles day, and they absolutely run the board on the Sunday. But it's more, I think, every so often we get a gentle reminder of, and you and I think would describe ourselves as purists. And every so often you get a gentle reminder of the game at its most pure. And that's what this Walker Cup was. Some fantastic stories coming out of it. I'm looking here in terms of some of the numbers. Gordon Sargent, one of the famous amateurs out of the American team, a highly touted player and one I'm sure we'll see in many years to come at the pointy end of the pro game. He went 4-0-0 in the Walker Cup victory for the United States. He's the first player to go 4-0 on the road in a Walker Cup since 1987. So an incredible performance there. And then an even better one, Gordon Sargent. Obviously, an incredible run from him, as we've just said. But Stuart Hagestad is a name that people will be familiar with if they've been dialed into American amateurs of the last few years. He's like the pro amateur. He's really the shiny beacon of a man, playing into his later years as an amateur and soaking up all the trimmings that come with that. He became just the 16th player in Walker Cup history to be part of 4 winning teams, joining a list that includes both Bobby Jones and Francis Ouimet. So some great individual stories for the victors. But as I said, for me, it was probably more at a macro level, seeing the amateurs play the oldest course in the game, the home of golf, where, the game that we love originated from. And, in fading light with thousands of people walking behind groups on the fairways of the old course was something pretty special.
I said to you before we started, I didn't catch much of this one, but what I will say is Gordon Sargent is going to be a very, very, very good player. I think he. I was just reading there. He won the individual NCAA championship, I believe, as a true freshman, so straight out of high school, in a team that went on to not even feature in the final of the team championship last year. So for him to step up and deliver is very impressive. And then I think they won 10 of their singles matches, Marshy. I'm not sure if you've got that correct number there, but I think it was 10 on the Sunday. And just really run over the top of Great Britain and Ireland is very impressive. So, props to the US team. I think it's 4 in a row now for the US team. So hopefully Great Britain and Ireland hopefully they can start to level the ledger in recent memory anyway. So.
Bruce, let's turn our attention to home. There's been a bit on the Australian golfing front in the last couple of weeks, not least of which the fact we actually hosted a DP World Tour Q School event, which pleasingly and probably unsurprisingly, given how stacked the field was with Australians, was in fact taken out by an Aussie, Matthias Sanchez.
Yes, yeah, really impressive performance actually. He only won by 2 shots, but it could have been a lot more. He had a massive stumble on the back nine. Made a triple bogey and his tee shot got stuck up a tree. So lost 3 shots there, and believe it actually got back to level pegging, and then he managed to turn things around and win by 2 strokes. I feel sorry for Braden Becker, the West Aussie as well, just to move away from Matthias Sanchez for a moment. Feel sorry for him. He missed by 1 shot after starting 72-74, flew home with back-to-back 69s and missed by 1 shot, unfortunately. But that was a name that I was tracking, obviously, looking at the West Australians as well, and Hayden Hopewell was on the board. But yeah, Matthias Sanchez, he was the... he's really the talking point to come out of it. So he's a very good player, Matthias Sanchez. I actually, interestingly, just watched a video with him where he played with our good friend Ron Chopper on YouTube, and just a very, very pure ball striker. So he's going to be a good young talent, and another one that I guess we can look forward to seeing more of on the Aussie tour anyway in the next couple of months, and as he moves through to stage 2 of the DP World Tour qualifying school.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, one of 4 moving through to second stage qualifying in November, alongside Andrew Lorty, Lucas Higgins, and Cooper Eccleston, who all advance. So, yeah, good weekend for Sanchez, and he's a good Melbourne man. I'm sure he'll be dialed into the qualifying final this Thursday evening. The Mighty D's up against the Pies, so hopefully we can have a win for Matthias and a win for the Mighty D's, as I'm sure he'll be dialed into. So, speaking of wins, mate, the Big Red. Aaron Wilkin has absolutely stormed home in the 4th and final round to secure victory at the BRG Open Golf Championship in Vietnam on the Asian Development Tour, Druids. What was it in the final round?
65.
No. What did he have?
Would have been
65.
7 under par, 65.
7 under 65. Birdies at 11, 15, and 18 to round out his back nine. Quite incredible. I mean, he's a guy who we've obviously had a number of conversations with now. I feel as though the last couple, though, and we said it to him when we last had him on off the back of a victory, he was kind of telegraphing this, the very first conversation we had with him on the podcast almost 18 months ago, that the foundation was there. He well and truly felt like the game was there. It was probably just the work ethic and continuing to dig in and probably be willing to go that little bit further that he hadn't in the past. I would suggest, based on form, it's well and truly clicked.
Tend to agree. 30K roughly Aussie in the skyrocket as well. If my rough conversion is correct, 17.5 US. Yeah, really good to see. Just a good dude. Like just a guy that, every time you talk to it just seems so genuine and someone that, it's great to see him doing so well and getting a win under the belt. And this will no doubt give him a lot of confidence moving forward as well. Digger Lawson was second there by one shot. He had a bit of a stumble on the last day with a 73, but started very well. So yeah, great to see Wilco doing great things. He's a good friend of this show, and he'll probably be tuned in at some point whenever he listens to this, and he can revel in his glory there. Side note: apparently Vietnam for golf is meant to be phenomenal. I've not been to Vietnam, but apparently for golf, very, very good. So I don't know if anyone who's listening to this has been to Vietnam and can maybe give us a bit of info re the golf, but apparently very good.
We'd welcome submissions because I have had similar. So if you have been, don't hesitate to drop us a line, even some photos, share some stories from your time over there. A good weekend as well, Drudes, for a young woman making waves on your side of the country and more broadly for Australian golf in Kirsten Rudgley.
Yeah, just such a raw young talent. I think we've spoken about Kirsten Rudgley for, I don't know, it feels like we've spoken about her for ages, but she's had a hell of a week over it. It was the Women's Irish Open presented by KPMG at Dromoland Castle in County Clare, Ireland. And so she finished in fourth officially, but it was technically it was a three-way playoff at 16 under par. And maybe we can talk about the playoff very briefly because I'm sure many people have seen the video of Anne van Dam actually driving back up the fairway with the course marshal, which maybe we can get to in a sec. But Kirsten Rudgley finishing just one shot out of that playoff actually, so she had a Sunday 67 and got herself into outright fourth, just missing out on that three-way playoff. But Anne van Dam driving back up the fairway in a cart with an official. The official lifts the rope up, lets the rope go as the bodies get under the rope. The clubs not so much. Rope snaps driver head off. They go back playing a par 5, I believe. She has to hit 3-wood off the tee, so she's at a massive disadvantage. And I think the winner, geez, I'm going to pause this name up here, Smilla Tarning Sondenberry, made eagle, I believe, if I'm not talking out my ass there, but I believe she might have made eagle on the first, which really put Anne van Dam at a disadvantage, not being able to hit driver there. So a couple of talking points to come out of the ladies' European Tour, Marshy.
It's quite incredible in turn of events for Anne van Dam. One of my favourite tweets I've seen in the past 48 hours was, it remiss of me not to correctly attribute this. I can't remember exactly who it was, but someone kind of retweeting the video and saying, Bryson wasn't kidding, these ropes are deadly.
That's very good. I like that.
That got me really good. So,
I like that.
But yeah, to your point, a fantastic weekend for Kirsten Rudgley. She is and could be anything really, given how far she hits the ball off the tee.
Correct.
It's just a case of, I think, minimizing the gap between her ceiling and her floor as it relates to the rest of her game. But yeah, a lot of positive signs. I think she's projecting incredibly well in terms of where she might go. So yeah, phenomenal. I also just want to call out here Madison Hinson-Tulchard, a young Aussie who is currently making her way through LPGA Q School. Yep. In fact, she has made it through first stage. The thing that jumped out at me here, Drudes, she was first round at Mission Hills, the Arnold Palmer course, where on the 12th hole, In her second round, she had an 11 on a par 4.
Jesus.
So yeah, quite incredible. She was even par eventually through that round, the first round, despite a 7 over 11 on the 12th hole, and ended up cruising through the first stage with a 5 under overall, 16 birdies, 4 bogeys, and one what has been described as an other, which was the 7 over 11 on the par 4 12th in the opening round. So big congratulations from Madison Hinson Tolchard moving through to the second stage. And all jokes aside, I think it does take something special. I know, and just to only reiterate the gap between you and I and the very best golfers going around, I know if I have a 7 over, that's my day. So all jokes aside, the ability to reset, coming home after that 7 over on the 12th, she went par, birdie, birdie, par, birdie to finish her round. So that's, yeah, I think that's, if you take one thing away from here, it's her ability to bounce back and recover. So well done to Maddie Tolchard through to, second stage of LPGA Q School.
Well done.
Were there any other results?
No.
I mean, I think there are a few other things. Scriv finished, I think, in the 30s at the European Masters at Ludwig Aberg won. Kempe was the best placed Aussie in the LPGA event in Portland. I think she was T21. Grace Kim tied for 26th, I believe. So a couple of Aussies darting around, but certainly the headlines there that we mentioned with Matthias Sanchez, Aaron Wilkin, Kirsten Rudgley, and a good result there for Maddie Tolchard. So that probably rounds us out from an Aussie's perspective. Drudes, just very briefly, I wanted to mention a name, and I don't want to be overly indulgent here, but when we were kind of rattling off some names that we didn't mind the look of moving into this upcoming Australian summer in our episode ahead of the NTPGA, and of course we will do a more comprehensive preview of the summer as a whole leading into the TPS event in Adelaide in October. But one name I mentioned was Maverick Ancliffe. In amongst the group of players I thought, maybe projected well. I just want to round back and kind of underline Mav Ancliffe's name, because I've just seen some things on social media in the last week or two that had me really bullish about Mav Ancliffe's summer. So the first thing I saw was a little video of him talking to our good friend Matt Winkley of WinkFit, who of course is one of the best in the business as it relates to strength and conditioning in Australian golf. Had Winks on the program before. We've heard Cassie Porter speak highly of Winks in her recent trip over to America that he accompanied her on. Winks is gaining a little bit of a cult following amongst Australian golfers, and as he should, because he gets results. But little video between he and Mav about the work they've been doing recently, and Mav's stacked it on in muscle. Like he's genuinely looking jacked in this video. Then a couple of days later, I see him with Jamie Glazier, who again would be familiar to listeners of this program, one of the best in the business from a mental perspective as it relates to golf. Has the Mental Mastery Golf podcast. It's a wonderful podcast if you're trying to get inside the mental side of the game to improve yourself in that aspect. So he's out doing some drills at the range with Jamie Glazier. And then this morning I see a little video of him taking a handful of cash off Louis Dobler in a cash game here in Brisbane.
Right.
So there's just a string of events that I'm drawing some dots here. I'm seeing some things from Mav Ancliffe that leaves me really bullish leading into the summer. So just wanted to round back, draw a line underneath Mav Ancliffe's name that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. As it projects towards the summer, people should be very excited about what might be coming from the Queenslander.
Okay. Underline it. I'm not sure how much I'm going to read into taking money off Louis Dobler because he's just returned from a holiday in Bali. So I'm not going to read to him. You can only beat who's in front of you. So good on you, Mav.
Exactly.
But I like the pick. He's very, very early interviewee on this show as well. Marsh, if people are
one of the earliest
ever so inclined to delve into the very, very depths of the original 19th Tee podcast, it was some of the worst gear you'll ever hear in terms of sound quality.
We don't often encourage it.
In terms of our flow, it was dreadful. Our guests were great, but we were shit. Anyway,
not so much us.
Anyway.
Look, that's probably a good little segue, Drew, just to briefly mention about a slight, I wouldn't say shift in focus, but probably a reaffirmation of the direction we took last year around this time of the year, where things well and truly, from a focus perspective, shift to the Australian tour.
Yeah.
I know we're early September, and it's not to say, I mean, moving forward, whether it's the back end of this year with things like the Ryder Cup or as we round the turn into major season next year, certainly. But I think there's a conscious decision that you and I have made, and it's been the subject of many a discussion, and certainly taking on board the feedback of our listeners, that we will only further ramp up, I suppose, our focus on the Australian game. There's a lot of podcasts out there that try and cover it all. Not many with great success. Certainly some do, but I think our bread and butter has always been what's happening here at home, and of course Australians playing abroad. So, we've had a chat. We feel as though that's where our best bang for buck is, and where we do our best work, and that's certainly where we're going to be zeroing in our focus, particularly across the next few months as the Australian summer ramps up. So, just worth mentioning, we'll probably start to put out a few little polls and things of that nature, questions, just to kind of really narrow in on the types of things that you want to hear as our listeners. But certainly from an umbrella perspective, it will be only an increasing Australian focus, Drews.
Yes, absolutely. That's what you will hear from us. I mean, that's our bread and butter, is what we know, what we love talking about. There's so many podcasts out there that talk about particularly the PGA Tour and other respective tours out there, and they've got their finger far more on the pulse than we do in relation to those. So we will always cover the big ones, Ryder Cups and majors and all that, because they are global. But over the next few months, you will hear a lot more about the Australian tour. You'll hear some exciting announcements as well, KM, that we are feverishly working away in the back end to announce those in the coming weeks. And we'll just have a lot more fun. We'll keep getting some interviews in. We'll keep getting some players on. You'll start to hear a lot more steady stream of Australian golf content. So if that's not for you, then that's totally okay. There's plenty of other podcasts out there, but we will be the Aussie one that focuses on the Aussie tour. So, yeah.
Well said. Couldn't agree more. That's why I'm here. Now, look, Tress, we'll be a little indulgent because I know we like to stick to time, and I think we've done relatively well this evening.
We
as
have.
I've checked the watch, so we don't want to blow the barn doors off in these last kind of 5 to 10 minutes. But some things that you and I are passionate about adjacent to the game of golf, and I'm cognizant this is coming off the back of the fact that we just spoke about how we're going to be focused on Australian golf. But you'll indulge us for a moment, as our listeners generally do in these last 5 to 10 minutes. A few other things kicking off around the world in terms of sport. I'll let you lead with college football. It is certainly a passion of both of ours. More so a borderline obsession of yours. So the college football season in America is well and truly back underway. First round of games the weekend just gone. So where are we sitting? I know people who might have been viewing from an arm's length will be thinking about terms like realignment and conference changes and shifts. And there's been a lot of controversy over in the North American region as it relates to who's playing who and who's in who in the zoo in college football. But the game's back underway, which is the most important thing.
It is, yes. And realignment has been a difficult one to follow. It all really started with your friends, the Texas Longhorns. They actually kicked it off a couple of years ago, moving over to the SEC next year, which is going to be very interesting to see how Texas goes in the SEC, the hardest conference that there is. My Oregon Ducks are moving to the Big Ten, which is also a very, very strong conference. It's very political. It's very boring. In fact, it does have big consequences, but very boring. Long story short, your Texas Longhorns got away with a relatively simple, it wasn't anything flashy, a 37-10 win over Rice University. So the Texas ranked number 11 at the minute. Quinn Ewers at quarterback with 3 touchdowns. So largely uninterrupted. Wasn't anything to really write home about. Would have actually liked to see him put up a few more. But I guess they're probably not showing the full playbook. And my Oregon Ducks ranked 15th in the country at the minute. They put up 81 on Portland State, which is a hell of a number. I think it's their biggest score in the modern history. So they've shown probably a lot of their playbook, but there's a lot kind of driving towards it. So they're our two teams. I don't think any ranked teams that played an unranked team actually lost. There was a game today. Actually, there was one game that LSU and Florida. LSU was ranked number 5, and they got blown out by Florida State, so they'll drop down a bit. But college football's back, and it's exciting, Marshy.
Just briefly, as it relates to Texas,
Yeah.
is Peyton Manning's son there yet, or is he coming next year?
No, I believe he's there now, Archie Manning.
So is he a red shirt behind Quinn Ewers? Because obviously under the NIL, they paid him a decent lick of cash to commit to Texas. But Quinn Ewers, despite being a truly unique character, is a hell of a player as well. So
yes. Well, look, you're putting me on the spot here because I actually don't know if he has redshirted this year.
I should probably be able to answer that question as a Texas supporter.
I think he's just, look, he's a true freshman. So he's first year on campus. I would suggest that, he was never really in line to take the starting job this year. So I think he's sitting maybe second or third on the depth chart, and he might get a couple of snaps in the next few games before we get into conference play. But yeah, Arch Manning, very famous name on the roster for the Longhorns. And I was wrong. Today, Clemson did lose. They were ranked number 9, and they actually lost to Duke. So they will, I'm sure, drop right down to the bottom of the right down to the bottom of the 25. Come the end of the week. So that's college football, Marshy.
And of course, I wouldn't call it casual, but if you're not deeply entrenched in it or follow a particular team as you do with the Ducks, the more casual fan of college golf, I think all eyes really this year in earnest will be on Caleb Williams, the quarterback of the USC Trojans, which appears to be the undisputed number 1 draft pick and has several NFL teams elbowing each other out of the way to lose games this year to pick up for next year. He's a very talented athlete, is Caleb Williams out of USC. It'll be fascinating to see where he lands in the National Football League next year. Speaking of which, the NFL kicks off this week. Kansas City. Kansas City off the board Thursday night American time, so Friday morning Australian time. Fascinating season coming up. I had my fantasy draft late last week. Fair to say, I went quarterback and running back heavy, and I've left wanting in the receivers. So I've gone Jalen Hurts, who probably, maybe almost definitely will be the best fantasy player this year at quarterback. And I actually shouldn't be a surprise to you. I was pick 8 in my fantasy draft, Drews, and where do you reckon I went? Obviously, Hurts was, I think, my 3rd round pick, pick 8. So you're thinking you're kind of like probably RB3, wide receiver 3 or 4 by the time you get to 8.
Yeah, I've got no idea. I'm hoping that someone's taken who's Tennessee's running back? Is Derrick Henry still Tennessee's running back? Who did you take from Texas?
Yeah.
Who did you take?
So I took Bijan Robinson. Out of the Longhorns.
Very good player.
Who was drafted in the 1st round by Atlanta last year. So Bijan Robinson is on my team, and we're going to hook him all year long, hopefully rack up. There's some chat that he could be, people already laying a marker down on him as Offensive Rookie of the Year. There's some talk about a 2,000-yard season, both obviously rushing and receiving.
Settle.
There's not much else going on in Atlanta. So he's going to get a lot of the ball. Just got to hope the body holds up for the first year in the NFL. So NFL kicks off this week. And then, of course, we're in the AFL finals.
Yeah.
A week off, which that can absolutely get in the bin, in my opinion. I don't understand why.
Sucks.
Yeah. If we're going to have it, I'm definitely in the camp of having it the week before the grand final, because I'm increasingly on board with no player should miss a grand final if they're concussed in the prelim. 2-week build into the grand final from a atmosphere and momentum perspective is much better than having a week off after the regular season. So this last week's been rubbish. But we begin proper Thursday evening at the Melbourne Cricket Ground with expecting 94,000 people there for Melbourne Collingwood, which will be an absolute belter.
Yeah.
And one that I'll be trying to catch at 9:20 p.m. Fijian time on the Coral Coast from the Warwick Hotel and Resort, hopefully on a channel in the bar at the Warwick. So we'll see how I go.
How, look, of course you're going to tell me that Melbourne are going to win this game, but
yeah,
tell me, give me the, I know Collingwood have had a couple of stumbles. Melbourne have also had a couple of stumbles. Just tell me, give me your 30 seconds. I'm giving you 30 seconds. I'm going to put a timer on. You give me 30 seconds on why Melbourne are going to win the game. Go.
So I think the game, the win against them on the King's birthday is probably the second or third best game we've played all season. And it was the first time really they were nullified. It was built on the two tenets of Melbourne's game, and that's contest and defense. I can guarantee you if we are to win this game, Collingwood aren't going to score more than 60 or 70 points if we are to win. My only concern is it shapes to be wet, and we've lost. The games we've lost this year have been ground ball contests, wet, muddy, a real belter. So that's my concern. But I think defense and contest.
Okay. I like it. That's good. Good 30-second overview. Thank you for that, because you could have done 30 minutes there, and we don't want to push on for that long.
Look, I think elsewhere, I get the sense Brisbane will take care of Port in Brisbane. I actually think GWS will do the Saints.
Yep.
Personally. Even with the news that Bedford is set to miss, despite the fact they've appealed that decision. And then obviously, what do we got? We got Sydney and
Carlton.
Who's the other team in the finals? Sydney and Carlton. Yeah, well, that'll be the Blues.
I low-key think that's one of the better. That and Brisbane Port are jostling for the second spot in terms of like games of the week. Obviously, Collingwood Melbourne is the first game of the week, but Sydney Carlton could low-key be a very, very good game of footy because both sides are coming in red hot. So I'm looking forward to.
I agree. I think it'll be a good game.
It's actually a good final
I think
series.
the first week of the finals.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
100%. I think there's probably some unlucky clubs. I think Adelaide were woefully unlucky not to probably squeeze in, but ultimately the teams you got there will make for a great first week, and we'll see who gets the break and who plays on in the second week. So all ahead of us.
It is. That's it.
All right, Drewster, that'll do us. Look at us. Look at us getting in ahead of time. That's fantastic. As I said, I'm off to Fiji for a little break. You're coming to Brisbane. How ironic is that? The one weekend we get you in Brisbane, I'm in the Pacific Islands, so that's good timing wise. We will be back. It won't be next Monday evening because I'll still be abroad, but we will be back in the coming weeks. We'll take a closer look probably at the Ryder Cup. We'll start to really ramp up our coverage of the Australian summer, as we said, start hearing some interviews and a decent preview of the first half of the summer coming up in the next couple of weeks as well. So no shortage of content coming away. A few announcements as Drew's flagged, plenty happening on the 19th tee. We look forward to being back in your ears soon.